Welcome, everybody, to another exciting edition of the Triple B Experience. Tonight is my honor, one-on-one, to interview a writer, a producer. He is the host of the Snake Pit that is with WWE Hall of Famer Jake the Snake Roberts. And everybody's got a pod with WWE Hall of Famer, the $1 Million Man, Ted Dibiase. This guy is doing major podcasting. I am so honored to have him on the show. Last week, I had his brother Dominic. It's like a family affair. And you know what? We're going to have a good time tonight. So it's my honor to welcome to the Triple B Experience, Marcus DeAngelo. Marcus, how you doing?
What's up, Bubba? Man, what an honor to be here on the show with you, especially because you were a childhood idol of mine. So I'm really pleased to be here.
Your brother said the same thing. Oh my God. Wow.
I was at that show with Dom and Gilbert, and there's a picture hanging behind me on the wall here of us with the Bushwhackers at that show.
I remember that.
Yep. And I remember I got into the ring. It was after your match. You were doing like a signing, and I think all I had was like a paper plate. And I got you to sign a paper plate. I remember that really distinctly.
Oh my God, God bless you. Yeah, because Dominic was telling me last week, and I said it was a tag match with my partner Gmo.
Okay.
And I remember the canvas it was a nice day, and the canvas was so hot.
Yep.
And then I believe Richie Allen come up and was causing controversy, and I gave him a Stone Cold Stunner or something, you know.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah. And then Richie got into refereeing. Was refereeing for years, and oh my God, everything comes full circle, I guess. I mean, but
dude, I told my wife that I was getting on the show with you, and told her the backstory, and she's like, "That's crazy." And now he wants to talk to you. I'm like, I know, it's nuts.
Ah, well, yeah, but I'm so honored. I mean, I was honored last week with Dominic and you, and I mean, how do you like you two growing up north, because I'm from Indiana, Pennsylvania. You're about an hour and so north of me growing up. Yep. How did you guys, and he was telling a little bit of story, but you can, elaborate, got into having the love of professional wrestling at that time, because it wasn't like it is now on every night. So how did you guys, and how did you, Marcus, get into professional wrestling?
Well, it's my first real memory of wrestling is watching, of course, in like the 90s with like Hogan. I remember I had this marble set, this set of WWF marbles, and like the Ultimate Warrior and Jake and Ted DiBiase and Hulk and Boss Man. There were all these marbles, and I always thought they were really cool. And I was like, look, these guys are like, human cartoon characters. I thought it was so neat. And then, I'm like watching here and there, but I wasn't super into it. I was really young at the time when these guys were on top. And so fast forward a few years, and Dominic is getting into the NWO storyline, and I'm Dominic's little brother. So like whatever Dominic got into, I got into as well.
You're younger than Dominic? You're younger than Dominic?
I am. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's 16 months older than me. He was born premature, so he's a little bit smaller than I am. So it's funny. Everybody thinks I'm his big brother.
You know what? I thought that myself too. I did.
Most people do. And what's really funny is most people think I am Dom whenever I come up and meet them. They're like, "Oh, Dominic." I'm like, "Yes." I don't even correct people anymore.
It's how many siblings do you have in your family?
We've got I've got 3 siblings, a sister and 2 brothers.
Now, are they wrestling fans like you and Dominic?
So our brother Luke is he loves Ric Flair, huge Ric Flair fan, but he's a little bit more of a casual fan, where it's just like, if I ask him something about Ric Flair, he might know it, but man, that's about as far as his knowledge goes. I don't think he's watching the current product at all. And my sister is like, she doesn't know what's going on, but she knows the names. Like whenever I said like, yeah, I've got a podcast with Jake the Snake, she's like, oh cool, I remember the name. Like she doesn't know who I'm talking about, but that's it.
Right.
But Dominic got into the NWO storyline, and me wanting to be like my brother. I'm like, he loves Scott Hall, and I'm like, okay, well, who's Scott Hall's buddy? And it's Kevin Nash. I'm like, there's my guy. So I was a huge Kevin Nash fan. My favorite storyline of all time in wrestling, and people tease me about it, is Kevin Nash and the Giant when Nash broke his neck in 1998. And they were doing all that thing. It's my favorite storyline. And like, people are like, oh, those matches are awful. I'm like, I don't care about the match. Like, the story was awesome, you know?
Well,
But yeah, that's how it started.
Well, at that time it was hot. Like when you were growing up, you and your brother and everybody watching it at that time, wrestling was hot because Monday nights you had Nitro, you had Raw, you had to get your VCR and you had to tape it because back then, if you missed it, you were done. You couldn't watch it.
Yeah, it was gone. Like, I think they'd do like one replay late at night or something, and then that's it.
Nitro, yeah, Nitro. WWE, no Raw, no Raw replays. So if you missed it, you missed it. And
it was Destination TV, dude.
So when you guys were watching it, you guys like get angry, when your guy is getting beat by, Dom's guy, and then you guys are like, oh man, and then you guys would start arguing and stuff like that.
It's funny because Dominic, being the older brother, he was always like, he was a big fan of baby faces, and I was inclined toward baby faces, but he needed a heel to oppose him, so he would have like a Hulk Hogan figure, and my first wrestling action figure was one of my podcast partners, Ted DiBiase. And so
how you know what I mean? Like, how does
it's surreal at times.
It goes like you said, full, like your wife said, full circle. Like, that's unreal.
Dude, it's wild. I told Ted that story, and he was like, seriously? He was like, I didn't think many kids liked having my figure. They just wanted to get it to beat up on, because he's a heel. I was like, no, dude, like, you were my guy because I was like, who is this guy? Like, this is my character, so I love him. You know what I mean? So yeah, even as a kid, I was a Ted DiBiase fan.
Well, I mean, recently that was the that Friday night main event when he bought it off Andre. 33 million people watched that. So, Ted doing what he did, he was phenomenal in the pro wrestling history because that was historic. Like, that's never been done.
Yes, just a crazy history. And like, as I do the podcast with him, of course, like, I knew him as the $1 Million Man, as everybody does, but you start to look at his history and stuff he was doing before I was even born, as I'm doing the research on him, it's like, man, this guy had a crazy, awesome history and lineage in wrestling.
And I know I don't want to get off a tangent because I have questions, but with Ted's career, he was in the WWF in the mid 70s.
Yep.
And I mean, he was great in Mid-South, and then all of a sudden he turned, and then everybody just hated him because he had the loaded glove. I mean, I'm a little historian kind of too. I mean, I love the Mid-South wrestling at that time because, from Indiana, Pennsylvania, WPTT channel 22, 10 o'clock at night was Mid-South. So,
man.
Yeah, I'm like an idiot savant sometimes, maybe. I don't
know.
Dude,
well, let me say, it's that stuff, it left an indelible mark. Like that heel turn that he did against JYD. Like, man, I can't tell you. But when I announced I'm doing the podcast, that one came up with a ton of people saying, like, I hope you cover this. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to get into all this a little later on.
Sure.
Because actually, Jake, I remember Jake wrestling Mid-South Terry Taylor, and that was one of the greatest matches I remember seeing when I was a kid. It was very, very good, and I haven't seen it since, so I got to try to find it. But it was the cat's meow. So
Jake and I are going to be covering that match here in
holy heck!
In 1 month, we're going to be talking about that very match,
and I'm going to definitely be listening because I'm telling you, it was awesome. It was phenomenal. Yeah. Wow. See, you got to love this podcasting stuff where stuff that you never thought that you'd actually ever be able to talk about, and these podcasts you can. Like, it's just a different thing because people don't realize that professional wrestling has a thing for everybody if they love it. Like you and myself, your brother, like, and other people that are wrestling fans. Like, it never ever goes away.
No. I like, and what's really cool is like, okay, a lot of folks nowadays don't like modern wrestling, and they're like, oh, well, it's not as good as it used to be. Well, now we all have access to the WWE Network, so in theory, if you really miss those old days, why don't you go back and watch, start in like the late 70s or whatever, and work your way back up. It'll take you years, and you get to enjoy all that stuff all over again. So it's a cool time to be a wrestling fan. There's options everywhere.
Yeah, and especially it's hot right now because the road, the WrestleMania. I mean,
boy,
everything is good. So, so your path, when you were in school and stuff, did you guys, I think I asked Dominic last week, did you guys, for being wrestling fans, did people like frown upon it because wrestling fans at that time was, the DX kind of stuff, and everybody was, you couldn't do that stuff, and people thought wrestling was, you couldn't watch it, and it was more violent and stuff like that. Did you guys, especially you, Marcus, did you have any situations where that happened to you because you were such a wrestling fan and stuff like that?
It was becoming such a part of pop culture by the time I started to get really into it that I think it was just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I mean, the teachers didn't want you doing the suck it symbol or whatever, but I mean, by and large, it was so many kids were wearing wrestling shirts when I was in school and were
Yeah.
into it and talking about the product. It was just like, what can these teachers do? There's no way to stop it. It was an unstoppable train at that point. So it's like, I think a lot of teachers just gave it up and just said, you know what, like these kids are going to do it regardless. So let's just let it ride.
Okay, so when you got out of high school, did you do any college or go to college or anything like that?
Yep, went to college actually at first at IUP there in Indiana.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's where I went
Okay.
first, and
Did you
my
learn? You must have
first
learned. You got a degree in alcoholism and partying, and
well,
'cause that's what I did too. So yeah.
my first semester there, I had a 1.7 GPA. So if
Well, you
that
had me
tells you
beat.
anything.
You had me beat. I had a 1.4.
So, I mean, I got that taste of freedom after high school, and I ran
Mhm.
with it, brother. So,
Right on.
that's why, I started at IUP, and I was like, "You know what? I need a fresh start. I'm gonna go to Clarion." So, I went to Clarion
You went to Clarion
University.
also?
Yep, and Dom
Okay.
was
No.
still there, so we lived together for a little bit.
Okay. And what was your major?
I went to
Communications.
school initially I went to school for business, but all through high school I'd had a lot of success as an actor. I'd always get cast in good roles or lead roles in through high school.
Oh,
So I was like,
really?
yeah, so I was like, well,
Wow.
maybe I can like make a living of this. So very foolishly, I studied theater, and everybody says that's like getting a degree in waiting tables. To me, it was more like getting a degree in drinking because I had a lot of leeway and just fucked around a lot. Am I allowed to swear on this?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Go
Okay.
ahead. No, you're good, brother.
Yeah,
That's why my algorithms go crazy anyway, because I say the F word like 16 times over. But yeah.
okay, good. I did my fair share of drinking and fucking around, and then I moved to Philly. And when I moved to Philly, I had $500 in my pocket. And I was moving out there to be an actor, and my rent was due, and I got a job right away. And that's when it was kind of like I grew up very fast in that
Did you
moment.
get a job in the acting field though? Did you have something like putting your stuff out there, like your 8x10s and your resume, handing it out, and doing stuff? Did you have anything that was something that was feasible, maybe an extra or something like that, and working your way up?
So I got lucky right away. I got a contract right away. I did an audition, and it was a pretty low key audition. I didn't have to even present an 8x10 or anything. It was just
Really?
like show up and audition for this stage show, and I got cast in it right away. So I signed a contract right away, and I'm like, okay, cool. Look, that was easy. Here I am.
Oh,
I'm an
it's all
actor now.
good now.
Yeah,
It's all river boats and dreams now. Yeah.
but
So
that's just
what
not.
was what was the part and what was the play?
Oh man, it was an indie play. It got accepted to the Edinburgh Film Festival, which is out in Scotland, to go and present, but like we didn't have enough funding to take it out there, so it was like
Oh, geez.
it was such an indie low level play that like very quickly I learned like, oh okay, like yeah, I got cast right away, but there's levels to this shit, so like
Yeah,
yep, I
yeah.
got cast, but at a very low level. But in the meantime, it's like rent is due, brother, and I don't have enough money, so I'm like, well, I'm gonna go get a shoot job while I try the acting thing. And before I knew it, it was like the shoot job was starting to take over all my time because money's rolling in. I'm feeling really comfortable again. And then it's like, I'll go to an audition next week. Or like I was looking it up and I'd be like, I'll go to one in 2 weeks or whatever. And then all of a sudden, it's just the shoot job took over. And finally, one day I sat down and I was like, it seems like I've got two choices here. I can pursue acting and either move to New York or California because
Mhm.
I'm not going to go anywhere in Philly,
Right.
or I can have a family. And I was like, I think I'm gonna go with the family. So I quit acting,
Okay.
focused on work, went back to school,
Well, and that's
and got
commendable too, because a lot of people, uh, I'm guessing you were probably what, 2021, you're, legal age drink, so you're 20, 22, something like
yep,
that. So a lot of people, they don't want to do that early in their life. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
oh, that's commendable. I mean,
Man,
Yeah,
it was tough, because I was having fun being goofing around and stuff, but, like,
sure.
dude, like, when those bills are coming due and, like, my student loans are about to start coming in, I'm like, "You know what? I've got a choice to make here."
Yeah.
And I made it, and, it sucked for a while because I was stuck doing some work that I wasn't real passionate about, but, fortunately, this opportunity came along, and here I find myself.
And well, and the trials and tribulations, make you persevere in ways that you can overcome anything. So, how did you get into, being a writer? And I mean, we from acting to, did you do any journalism classes too while you were acting?
So I'm actually I'm really not a writer. I did like a lot of creative writing and stuff in high school, but
Uh
I'm
huh.
really not I'm not a journalist. That's Dom. Like I helped him out whenever we were doing the Keystone
Okay.
statement way back when, but I never did
What was
any
the
wrestling
Keystone?
journalism.
What was the Keystone statement? Was it a
So
podcast too?
it was a podcast that Dominic and I did with our buddy Zach, and then we also had like a web page where we'd put articles and stuff. So I'd write some articles for that here and there, but it was like we weren't making any money. And again, I was like I had the shoot job, and I just gotten married, and like my wife and I are starting to talk about having a kid at that point. So I'm
Uh
just
huh.
like, look, I don't have time to invest in this. Like I need to make money. So that was my priority. But then you flash forward. I'm working in marketing for a really small company, and the company
Okay.
is so small that when sometimes trucks would come in and they would need help unloading the trucks. So here I am at this
You're
point
just.
now.
You're
I've got
just.
2 degrees, and
Uh
I'm out
huh.
there unloading trucks. But while I'm doing that, I'm listening to Conrad Thompson's podcast. So I'm unloading these trucks and listening to the podcast, and
Oh my
just like
god.
thinking, like, man, I wish I could do that for a living. And
That's
like,
well,
God,
that's when he first started. Because when he first started, that was and I'm not kissing anybody's ass, but that was the most awesome podcast of
oh
wrestling I've ever heard. Because I listened to it, and I think my first episode was the Dusty Rhodes episode,
yeah,
and
that's
then
their first one.
yeah, and I was hooked. Now a little
Yep.
bit now I don't listen to it so much. Actually, I listen to you and your brother.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's still great. I mean, I still do listen to that. So you listen to something to wrestle with, and then
Mhm.
you just kept wanting to. You Since you already did the podcasting stuff, and when you did the podcasting with your brother and your buddy, was it based on wrestling or other
So
stuff?
wrestling was sprinkled in. It was mostly about sports and just Pittsburgh in general, and like
Speaking of sports, what kind of Pittsburgh sports or other sports?
so it would be a lot of Pittsburgh sports, but we would argue a lot because I'm a huge Cowboys fan.
Yeah, I know.
Uh, so like we did the
How did that happen? Living in northern western Pennsylvania, and your brother's a Jets fan. I mean, how does that boggles my mind? Being a huge diehard Steeler fan, it just boggles my mind.
well, I'll tell you how it's so
I'm
before
listening.
Dominic was a Jets fan, he was a Cowboys fan, and it was because he liked Emmett Smith.
Okay.
So
Well, yeah.
again, I'm the younger brother, so whatever Dom likes, I like. So Dom was saying like, "Oh, I like the Cowboys. I like Emmett Smith," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I like the Cowboys and I like Troy Aikman." And so I decided I was a huge Troy Aikman fan, and I continue to be a Cowboys fan. He became a Jets fan, and at that point, I was old enough that I'm like, "Well, I still like the Cowboys," so I stuck with them.
So, and when you were watching it, when you guys were watching it, I mean, your family was. Is there anybody a Steeler fan in your
No, no,
family?
my
What?
dad wasn't really that into sports. My mom doesn't follow sports at all, so it was really just me and
Oh,
Dom watching
wow.
sports.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my dad was like a
Wow.
casual fan, like he loved
Sure.
Joe Namath back in the day, but like that was it. So
Well,
yeah, it was
who doesn't love Joe Namath, man?
Joe Willie. He was like this smooth and cool, and
Yep, yep.
he always had like a chick on his arm. How do you
Oh
not like
yeah, and
that
then tries every time. He
guy?
doesn't care how old he is. But
But
he's
yeah,
he's like 80 something.
we talked a lot of sports on that. But then,
Okay.
when Dominic started working for WrestleZone, we also did a little podcast there, called Two Dynamite Dudes, where we would just like
Okay.
review Dynamite.
I seen that. And where did you come
Yeah,
up with it? How did you guys come up with a name, both of you? And you guys like
it
write
was
stuff
always just
down and just throw stuff out there? Because trying to find a name for shows is very, very hard. It's like wrestling companies, trying to find a wrestling company if you're a promoter.
right.
So did you
No,
guys just
it was always just Dom. He would just come up with it, and I was just like, again, here I am with like my shoot job and my ambitions for a kid. I just bought a house when we started that one, so I'm just like, yeah, dude, whatever you want to do, let's do it. So did the podcast with him there for a while and started to build a very, very small name in wrestling where some people would listen to us and comment and like our stuff.
And
And then
where's you guys, the Dude podcast, where was it based out of? We're at in Pennsylvania.
Dominic and I would meet like on StreamYard. So I'm in Pittsburgh. I'm in the Gibsonia part of Pittsburgh,
Okay.
and Dom is in Bloomfield. So we would just like coordinate a time and meet here on StreamYard and record and fire it
Okay.
over to
Okay.
the YouTube channel for WrestleZone.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah, same as I
Yeah.
do. StreamYard's a good thing. It's the best, I
Oh,
think.
dude, it's such a great platform for
Mhm.
podcasting on.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys got that. You're working in your shoot job and you're listening to Conrad and Bruce and you're like, "Oh my, I want to get a little higher than where I'm at."
Yeah, yeah. And so this is just 3 years ago. I was listening to all these podcasts and I was working at this job, and I was getting super into Jeff Jarrett's podcast, My World, at that time
Okay.
too. And
Okay, because I think that was his second. I think that was at his second or Bischoff. It was either second or third podcast under the umbrella.
let's
I
see.
think.
So Bruce was first.
Yeah.
Then it's Tony Schiavone.
Okay.
And then I think it went
R,
JR or Bischoff,
R,
then JR,
R,
then R, and then I mean it was like
yeah. Okay, he was in the top five. Jarrett was in the top five.
Yeah. So he was like just a snowball rolling downhill, and it was, I mean, growing and getting bigger and better. And then one night, I'm miserable. I don't like the job that I'm working at, and I'm not passionate about that field. And I'm like, I want to do something else. And during that time, I was getting on Indeed and applying, and I was, no joke, dude, I was applying to like seriously like 30 fucking jobs a week and not hearing back from one the whole time. Yeah. So I was in a really bad spot where I was like, I felt stuck. And
I've been down that road too. I feel you. I totally understand where you've been. Yeah.
Yeah. It was so frustrating, and it seriously felt like being in a cage where it's like, dude, I'm applying, I have experience. Like, what is it going to take for me to move on?
Right.
And then here one night, I'm scrolling Twitter and I see Ad Free Shows is hiring a social media coordinator.
Okay, so what is? And I was this is a question I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
What is the ad-free shows? Explain that to me, because sometimes I got smacked in the head a couple times with some steel chairs. So
over the course of your career, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Once by my podcast partner, even.
I got DDT'd by him, like we talked in off. I mean, it was quick. Boom. It was,
so that'll do it.
Yeah, he didn't fuck around, man. He tapped me on the back and boom, I was down. It was fast.
Oh yeah. Quick as a wink, man. He was too. Dude, watching back his old stuff, like him in Georgia and Mid-South, like and I always say this to him, like, you were just very crisp. Like everything he did was very crisp and fast, and that was like part of the, like, he struck like a snake, and it was
Plus, he was
fun.
the original Legion of Doom.
Yes, dude, and we did a full episode on that, and brother, some of the stories, awesome.
I know. Hawk and Animal was something else, man.
Oh man. Well, in any case, though, I diverted.
That's okay. That's okay.
Oh, Ad Free Shows is the network that we have all of.
That's Conrad's. That's his platform, the Ad Free Shows.
Ad Free Shows, and it's a Patreon. So there's members that can join adfreeshows.com. And by the way, if you're listening to this and you're not a member and you're a wrestling fan, brother, you're missing out on some killer content that's exclusive on Ad Free Shows, like Lex Express with Lex Luger. It's a podcast Conrad does once a month. The Tuesdays with the Taskmaster with Kevin Sullivan. I could go on and on.
God almighty. Yeah. Like, there's a smorgasbord of wrestling podcasts under that banner.
Oh man, and that's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, David Crockett is on there with the book, and he has the actual booking logs from JCP, and they're going month by month talking about it. Like, dude, it's a crazy awesome podcast. There's so much great content on there. It's adfreeshows.com. Seriously, go and be part of it. So it's a Patreon where members join as well, and I saw that they were hiring a social media coordinator. So
you're like, you know what, honey, I'm gambling. We're gonna gamble.
I'm applying. Yeah. So
awesome.
Well, then Dominic is the one who really made it happen, because I saw the person I sent to, his name was Evan Polisher. And so I was like, hey Dom, do you know Evan Polisher? And Dom was like, yeah, I know him, I have his number. I was like, could you shoot him a text and tell him I just applied for the job? I got an email that night from Evan, And next thing you know, Evan's like, hey, we're gonna see if this thing works. Would you be willing to do it on like a trial basis? And I said, yeah, sure. He's like, how would you feel about doing it for free though, on a trial basis,
Right,
just so
right.
we can kind of see what you're all about? I was like, absolutely. So I'm working the shoot job, and then
So you're
I'm
doing
I'm
a shoot
also
job. You're doing it for free just to say, hey, you're good enough that you could sign your ink to the paper and then let's
yep.
get it on. Oh my.
Let me
Okay.
prove myself, and that's always been my thing, is like, okay, if you want me to prove myself, I'm going to show you that I deserve this. And that's what I did. And I did that. I think I was doing it for free for a month and a
And,
half, and
uh-huh.
then they brought me on part-time. So I'm doing the shoot job, and now I'm a part-time employee, so I've got even more put on my plate by them. So it's like
Uh-huh.
I was going to the shoot job, and then I was working another 6 hours after I got home from the shoot job, getting all this
Sure.
stuff together for
Sure.
social the
Yeah.
next day.
Yeah, because doing the social media stuff, but you didn't have a communication degree.
No.
Okay. You sound like you've been on the radio because I've listened to your podcast. I mean, you've done commercials, you announce commercials, you've done everything, and you did it, working you and your brother doing these podcasts and stuff like that, getting the feel, of talking behind a mic
Yeah.
without ever doing it before.
Right. I had never done it before. Like, really, it was just like
Wow.
fortunately, being in acting, I'd been on
That's what I was gonna
stage
ask you. The
many
acting
times.
and doing
Yep.
stuff, you have a flow, and it's because you're acting helped you out become a podcaster, I'm gonna guess.
I don't get shy around people. Like a big crowd of
Okay.
people don't intimidate me. So that's why it's like, it's from acting. And so I know that there's a big audience listening to me and Jake, and it's just like, okay, like I know that a lot of people are intimidated by that. And it's like, I'm just not, and I'm not patting myself on the back. It's just, it's years of
Well,
experience to
I'll
kind of,
pat I'll pat you on the back because being a podcaster, like sometimes I mess up my words, but when you do your stuff, it's precision and it's articulate when you're talking about stuff and you're asking Jake important questions and you're keeping everything flowing, and that's hard to do. Like, and then you do the commercials. So,
right.
well, if you ain't gonna pat yourself on the goddamn back, I will. But
I
yeah, I mean, you and your
appreciate it.
brother. I mean, you and your brother. I mean, you probably are the only two, maybe brothers in the United States doing wrestling podcasts. I
You know
I
what?
I
You
don't.
might
I
be
bet
right.
you. Well, I
I think
probably
you are.
I don't. Well, I mean, I do. I'm a gambler. I like to bet a little bit, but yeah, I bet because there's nobody. You two have to be. And
Wow.
now you
I never thought
guys.
about that.
Well, I'm glad I always think outside the box.
That's
That's good
cool.
though.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's awesome. Dominic and I
Yeah, that is awesome.
we gotta do something with it. There's something there.
Well, hey, it's all well, you're evolving and that's what means something, you know what I mean? So, how did you get you're ad free, you're working part-time. How did you
Mhm.
get to be full-time to get this awesome 2 podcast or whatever, what was your first podcast that you did that you were actually like, you were the engineer, you were the top, the man driving the force?
Well,
What
it's when I first started, it was strictly doing the social media, and so it was January 1st, 2022 is when I started full time with the company. Evan had said it's a full time position, but we're just kind of waiting and trying to make sure that you're the right guy for the job. It's an important job, and so
Uh-huh.
by January 1st, 2022, I had started full time, and that meant that I was managing all of the social media accounts for all of the shows.
Oh my
And
god.
yeah,
Holy
and
heck.
so
I mean, I can only imagine because I mean, I can't even do mine, and you're juggling 10.
Dude, yeah, it was a lot. It was a
A
lot of work,
lot of
and
energy drinks and coffee and some, booze in between.
but at that time, I was like, that's all I want to do. I'm good without being anything else for the company. I just want to do social media. I love what I'm
Okay.
doing,
Right.
and so flash forward a little bit, and I'd started to develop really good relationships with guys like Arn Anderson and Jeff Jarrett through helping them on social media. Flash
Sure.
forward a little bit, I'm in Dallas for WrestleCon, ahead of WrestleMania out there in Dallas, when the same WrestleMania where Cody made his debut. So I'm out there in Dallas, and I'm in a
Okay.
Starbucks, and Jake Roberts is in there. And I had not met Jake, but I had
Just
been
sitting
working.
there. Just sitting there drinking coffee.
Actually, he was in line in front of me.
Oh,
I was like, who's this tall guy? I was like, oh,
you're looking up like, oh my
Yeah.
God.
But so I had done social media for the DDP Snake Pit podcast, which was Jake's first podcast for the network. So I tap him on the shoulder. I was like, hi, Jake, I'm Marcus. I do the social media for DDP Snake Pit. He was like, oh, hey, what's up, man? And he was like, I need help on my social media. And I was
Because
like, yeah.
like me, he's probably not tech savvy enough that he's probably got two thumbs on one hand.
He doesn't know how to do like download a video or anything like that. Like, he was good at, he was posting and stuff, but it's just
Sure.
like, kind of bare bones. So he was like, I need somebody to help me and like help outline stuff and, manage that. And I was like, well, look, I was like, here's my number. And this is my first time meeting him. He's like, well, here's my number. And he just gives me his phone number.
Wow.
And,
In a coffee shop.
in a coffee shop, and we stayed in contact, and I called him whenever I got back to Pittsburgh, and he was like, you want to do it? And I was like, yeah. Well, here, Jake and I are building a rapport, and we're becoming buddies over the course of the year. So for all of 2022, all the way up until October, I was strictly doing social media for the company. Here in October, I get a call from Conrad, and he was like, hey, so we're looking to do a little restructure. He was like, how would you feel about doing social media and producing the Road Dogg show, Jeff Jarrett's show, and being the producer also for DDP Snake Pit? He was like, I also want you to be the host of DDP Snake Pit.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, I was just like blown away. Like, oh, you want me to be a host? It was never my ambition to be a host with this. So
did you feel apprehensive when you had to take you had to sit down probably because you're probably, standing up, but you probably had to sit down, take a deep breath. And you had to take
I literally did. I sat down as I was on the phone with Conrad, and like my head is just spinning because I'm like, okay, now I've got to produce, which I've never done, and I've got to become a host.
Wow.
So fortunately though, at this time, Jake and I are buddies, and it just makes sense. Well, the next day, DDP decided to step away from the podcast, DDP Snake Pit. So I was like, well, there's that podcast I was about to host just went down the shitter, I guess. But I called Jake. I was like, hey man, what happened? And he was like, oh, Dallas is just busy. That's just all it boils down to. He's just really busy. And I was like, well, would you still want to do a podcast if I pitch it to Conrad? And he was like, yeah. So I call Conrad, tell him what I'm thinking, and Conrad's like, yeah, I mean, the space is already there, go ahead and use it. So Jake and I, that's how I started my podcast with Jake. And in the meantime, I'm producing the other shows. Yeah.
Wow. Because you're the shows that you did, the podcasting when you did with Dominic, actually gave you a little bit, and the acting gave you a little bit to now do this podcast with Jake.
Right.
Holy shit.
And I feel prepared, and me and Jake are buddies, so I know that it's, I don't have to be nervous around him.
It
so
was
I'm
smooth.
like, okay,
it was a smooth transition. It wasn't like apprehensive, and there was no, everything was smooth, and you could talk to him and you can let him know what you want to do or how you want to do it. And he was probably like, you know what, Marcus, you know what, man, go ahead. It's all cool. Let's just do it.
Yeah, and there's the trust factor between the two of us. He trusts me and knows I'm going to work my ass off. I trust him and know that he's going to, help me out and be there when I need him to be there. And so now, Jake and I are getting in the groove, and I'm producing Jeff, and I'm producing Road Dogg's podcast. And then it's WrestleMania season again the next year, WrestleMania 2023. And I'm in Virginia visiting people, and I get a call, and it's Jake. And I'm in the car with my wife at the time, and I get a call, and it's Jake. I'm like, hey, dude, what's up? And he was like, hey, do you want to do a podcast? And I was like, you're in California, bro. I was like, you're at WrestleCon right now, aren't you? I was like, I can't do a podcast. I'm in Virginia.
I'm in the car.
He's like, no, dude, a new podcast. And I was like, oh, okay, with who? He was like, Ted Dibiase is right here. And he just hands Ted the phone.
Wow.
So it's out of nowhere. I get a call from Jake, and then bam, I'm on the phone with Ted Dibiase. And I start talking to Ted, and he's got that great voice. And
Jake puts you over like Rover, brother.
Yep.
Yeah. Put you over like Rover. Yep.
That's what he said. He was like, man, I told him how great you are.
I just put you over. I can't do a Jake impersonation.
That was actually pretty good.
Oh, thanks. But yeah, you got two. Now you have the most two iconic presence ever in professional wrestling history, and you're the host of their podcasts.
And it all just happened that fast, man.
God damn.
Going from being scrolling Twitter and wanting to be a social media guy to all of a sudden I'm doing this. And so, yeah. And from there, it's like, Jake also hooked me up with Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And,
great dude. Like everybody you have, I somewhere 6 degrees of separation. You know, Jake, I wrestled Jake. I met Ted was here in Indiana, Pennsylvania, talking about his life at a church, in the
Oh,
Summit
cool.
Church, and I went because it was very spiritual and it was nice about his life. And I met him, and you know, he was great, awesome. And then I tagged up with Hacksaw many years ago. So
Did you
I mean,
really?
yes, in Punxsutawney, when I was doing the crazy Bubster gimmick when I had blonde hair and I thought I was a heavyset Hulk Hogan wannabe. Yes. So
that
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 is
works with
just
Jim.
amazing. Yeah, that's just amazing that all three, you know what I mean? Like it's 6 for me. I mean, but it's great that you have iconic people that you're doing this podcast in the wrestling world because I mean, Jake is by far the greatest mind in professional wrestling.
Yes.
And Ted is probably one of the great technicians. And then he had one of the greatest gimmick also, which was also, I believe it was Vince.
It was.
I
That's
know.
what
I
that's what
believe it
Ted
was
said.
Vince.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have one of the most patriotic individuals ever
Over the top
in Hacksaw.
personality, character
Yeah.
guys. I mean, Jim always tells me, he's like, a lot of people will criticize me and my gimmick. They'll say like, "Oh, all you ever did was go out there and chant USA or chant ho." And
He
Jim's
was
like,
over.
"Okay, here's a 2x4. You go out there and see if you can get the audience behind you."
And he got it
Uh,
over. He got it
yeah,
over.
he got it over.
Yeah.
Like charismatic as the day is long. Jim Duggan has got it. Whatever the it factor is, Jim has got it.
So you do with Hacksaw once a month, and then Jim, does he just do it once a month? He doesn't do like Ted and Jake. He just wants to do like once a month just to get a little feel of being in the podcast world.
Jim and I are we're twice a month,
Oh,
and
twice a month. Okay, I'm
yep,
sorry.
and yeah, it's bi-monthly and it's exclusive on YouTube. So the same
Okay.
YouTube channel where I have the all of the Everybody's Got a Pod stuff.
Uh-huh.
Ted and Jim share that space. And yeah, Jim also, he likes to post videos of like his day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
So like giving a tour of his property, or the most recent one is him on the Jericho cruise. So
Oh,
man, it's
okay.
just, yeah, some incredible, awesome content. And it's just cool because what else is nice about working with these three guys in podcasting is their careers are all very close to one another. They were all in
Yeah.
Mid-South at the same time. They're all
Yep.
in the WWF at the same time. Ted and Jim both moved on to WCW around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it just works really well as far as like I'm doing research. And actually here this past month in January, I was like, you know what? I'm doing Royal Rumble 89. It's 35 years ago.
Oh
I'm doing
my.
Royal Rumble 89 with all three of them. All the research is going to be very similar, but I want to hear all the different takes from these
Are
three
you gonna
guys
do
over there.
a all three of them in one show?
So that's what Ted pitched to me. He was like, "Hey, why
That's
don't we do
awesome.
that for WrestleMania? WrestleMania
Ooh,
5. It's the 35-year anniversary." And I
wow.
was like, "That's a great idea." So I'm gonna try
So
to get all three of them to talk about it.
So yeah, because that could be a periodical big time show with all it would be a triple play with all three of them because no offense, they were pillars in Mid South, they were
Hmm.
pillars in WWE, and because all three just interconversing and you just lead them the way and doing whatever could
Oh
be
yeah, I'm
ratings
I'm
hit.
I'm just gonna throw a softball and stand out of the way while they hit a home run. That's
Wow.
my thing.
And that's what you do. You do on the ad free. You got these guys, three of your guys underneath you. So, and it's is there you are one of many underneath Conrad, or is it just you and Conrad, or is there a whole
So
bunch of other guys?
So
I don't
there's
know.
other hosts in the network, and just to be clear, so I produce My World with Jeff Jarrett, and that's part of Conrad's network, and of course the Snake Pit with Jake is part of Conrad's network. But Everybody's Got a Pod is part of the premier streaming network of podcasts run by Josh Chernoff,
Oh,
and
okay.
the Hacksaw Hour with Jim Duggan is something I just produce independently. It's not associated with any
Oh,
particular
so
platform.
you can do you're not like a wrestler that has to be underneath one company. You can actually go to other stuff and not have
Right,
any
I'm like a
political.
mercenary. Yeah.
Okay, and there's no issues like that? There's no
No,
recourse? Everybody
no.
gets along, and that's great because
Conrad is awesome. He's generous. He knows that there's enough space in this realm for everybody, and he's like, "No, man, go make wrestling podcasting better. Like, yeah,
oh,
go seize opportunities." Yeah.
that's awesome because, I mean, me being in the independent they no, sometimes people don't get along, and that's phenomenal that wrestling podcasters can get along and there's no issues and everybody works together. That's I
No,
like that.
everybody's great. And look, like
Okay.
Paul Bromwell's a host on the network as well with Arn Anderson. Paul is fantastic, such a great host and a great human being. John Alba's got the podcast with Matt Hardy on the network. I
Oh,
mean, yeah,
geez. Wow.
there's a fair
Wow.
amount of talent that works
Yeah.
there in the network. Yeah.
So when you do your when you do your shows, even if it's Jake or if it's Hacksaw or if it's Ted, you have to research everything so you can get everything situated. So how let take us to like maybe one episode, how you get ready for an episode of doing stuff.
Sure. So for Jake, I just brought on a researcher recently. His name is Andrew Hermes, and just a really sharp guy, great mind for wrestling. He remembers everything, and he helps me out with research on Jake's because it's getting to the point now where it's like, man, I can't do research for 3 episodes every single week. I'll do it
Got it.
for Hacksaw and Ted, but that's it.
Gotcha.
So Andrew's great and he helps me out. But my process whenever it comes to it is I use the Observer a lot because say what you want about Meltzer, he was a great timeline guy.
Right.
Where it's
Everything's
like,
written down. Like you don't have
yes.
to. Not everything is a 6-star match, but you know what I mean. Like
So I don't pay attention to his opinions. I'm like,
right.
what happened on what date?
Mhm.
That's what I use Meltzer for. And what's
Okay.
funny is it's all digital on the Wrestling Observer website except for the old stuff.
Oh,
So it's digitized from 1991 on. From 1990 and below,
you got to go search it.
it's all in PDF form, and you just have to read it, like read the PDFs.
Oh
So
my.
I'm like squinting at PDFs from like 1989 just to try and complete my research. But yeah, so that's a big part of my process. But then also like websites like Cage Match are really
Mhm.
a great resource for telling you specific dates, and
Yep, yep,
it's out
yep, yeah,
there
yeah,
if you
I've
want
seen
to look
that
for it.
site, yeah. Well, I've seen some stuff of my stuff is a little bit of stuff is on that site. So yeah, I've looked at stuff like that before, but so you do a lot of research and then you have it written down and then you like do you go out and get your own sponsors or do you have people coming to you and like, "Hey, Marcus, let's sponsor Taco Bell, say Taco Bell, that'd be great. You know what I mean?
Oh, that'd
Taco
be
Bell
awesome.
wants to
Yeah.
sponsor, Jake and Ted, and we're going to give you this, and here's the commercial, or here's how we want to do a commercial because you do all your commercials because I've heard them, and you cut your own tracks on them, so that takes time too, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've got to do those, and we have an ad sales guy, Dave Green, who's fantastic, and he sells most of the sponsorships. But every once in a while, actually today, as a matter of fact, I got a sponsorship offer via email. So sometimes they come to me, but
Uh-huh.
Dave is awesome, and I want him to get his piece of it. So I'll just forward it to Dave and say like, hey man, I got this offer. If you want to handle it, and yeah, he
Okay,
just
so Dave would get the sponsorship, and then you would just cut the track you would do the track, and then he
right.
would write it up, and then okay,
The company sends us copy for it where they'll say like, here's some bullet points for what we want you to say, but do it in your own voice. And so
uh-huh,
you kind of like look at it and think about it. And then what else is nice is they'll send you the products. So it's not just like some BS where you're like, oh boy, did I love Taco Bell and you've never eaten it. It's
right.
like they send it to you and you get to try it and see what it's like. And then that way you can say like, hey, look, I tried this thing and it's a legit game changer. And
Mhm.
that's all the sponsors, I've been very fortunate. I've not had one single sponsor where I've gotten the product and be like, well, this is garbage. They're all awesome. So
Well,
yeah, it's
I love when they do it. It's always about manscaping. Every wrestling podcast got manscaping or something to help them out in the bedroom. Like, I mean,
yep.
that's you know what I mean. Like, that's a big. I mean, they must feel that the old wrestling fans, are shaggy and can't do anything with with their Johnson. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Like who listens to these podcasts? Oh, 99.9% dudes. Okay,
yeah,
this is what we'll
yeah.
market to
Do you
them.
have any? Do you have any? I mean, speaking of any women, do you have any women that are fans of the show?
Yeah, it's you can't exactly see or track
Mhm.
demographics, but
Okay,
every once in a while, like on social, a girl will reach out to me and say like, "Hey, I love the show," and something like
gotcha.
that. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's guys, and it's
Okay,
guys that are like around my age or maybe a little bit younger.
my
It's
age.
the
Yeah,
25 to 54-year-old male
yep,
demographic.
yep, demographic. Because when you do your, you always do a lot of ask, Jake or ask Ted anything. So you'll see if
Yep.
it's a female the email, when they ask the questions. So yeah,
Yes,
you'll probably
and yep, that's a good point. I get plenty of those on the
yeah.
Ask Ted and Ask Jake, and yeah, it's some people get annoyed because they're like, "Oh, you do so many of them." I want it to
Why?
be
Why
well.
do people get annoyed? Because it's informational, and
Mhm.
you're getting Jake or Ted's or even Hacksaw's take on a question.
And
I
they might
mean,
answer
that's
yours. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's like,
Like,
what's
why
there
would
to be
any
annoyed with? But no, it's like, well,
people are
I think it's
finicky.
the frequency, but the thing is I try to do one per month with each talent that I work with because
Sure.
A, it gives people the opportunity to kind of interact, but B, it's like you never know what's going to come up or what stories are going to come out. Like I've been doing this podcast with Jake for more than a year now, and it's like, you'd think I know a lot of his stories, but man,
Nope.
a lot of the time, dude, it's like first of all, he's got so much history. There's so many stories left to tell, but
Yeah.
also it's like somebody will ask him a question. I'll be like, I bet he doesn't really have anything on this. And he'll go off on it for like, whatever, 10, 20
And there
minutes with a
and there it
great
is.
story.
And
Yeah.
everybody thinks that all the meat is off the bone, but really it's not. It's just still
Oh,
there. And then they'll ask maybe the same question and interpret it a different way, or a different, different. I mean, yeah, I think those are great because because I think to me, well, Conrad did that, and then everybody, with ask Bruce, you know what I mean. So everybody,
yep.
and that's cool because even everybody does it. Like Mark Madden does it. You know what I mean? Everybody in this genre. I mean, I think I've done it one time, you know what I mean, or sometimes, but nobody asked me anything. But anyway, it's a good thing to do, and it gives you another show where it doesn't take a lot to produce or do whatever because it's just the questions, and Jake or Ted or Hacksaw are answering it. So it actually
And
is
it
probably a
and it challenges these talents, like a lot of times, these guys have been answering the same questions for years and years. Ted is always asked about kicking the basketball, or
mhm,
the main event. Jake is always asked about the cobra biting Randy Savage or working with Andre. So it's like these guys have been telling these stories for so long that it's become almost like a script in their heads. Where like when they
mhm.
get on a radio show and they're asked a question, it's very similar from one radio show to another the way that they answer. So kind of my goal going into this was I was like, okay, how can I take a deeper dive on these subjects than anybody else ever has, and really, really get the story underneath the story. And Jake and I just recently released an episode called Jake Meets Vince, and it's about Jake's debut with the
Oh,
WWF, and that's a
great. I that's the one recently.
yes, that's our
Yes,
most
very
recent
good.
episode.
And then you kept me fucking hanging because now you guys, you're like, oh, next time we'll finish it, and I'm like,
We'll
oh
move
damn, I
on
was
to
getting
WrestleMania.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. I was like,
But
God damn
so
you.
that's a subject that Jake has talked about so often. Before I ever started a podcast with him, I knew the story about Jake starting with the WWF. But I'm like,
Uh,
why aren't they asking this question? Oh, I'd love to know about this. Who else was in the room? What was the process like? When did you first call him? When did he first talk to you? Did he make you a good offer? What about merch?
mhm.
So there's so many other questions that he just doesn't get asked about that subject, that like Jake and I have now created the definitive edition of when Jake debuted for the WWF, and that's my goal. I want the definitive edition of everything that Jake or Ted or Hacksaw do.
Now, when you do a show and you're asking, say, ask Jake or ask Ted or ask Axel anything, do you have everything written down? Do they know that you're asking these questions beforehand, kind of? So it gives them a little bit of, or you're getting the honest Jake and Ted because you want as real as you possibly can get. So you probably doesn't tell them. You're just like,
I've
here we
offered it
go.
to them. I'm like, hey, look, I've finished the notes. If you guys want it, you can have it. And all of them say the same thing. They're like, nope, I want to be surprised. Let's just do
You
it.
know what? And that's the best way to do it because it's real. And then if they go off or they won't answer, you know what I mean? Or
Hmm.
like I think Jake, I mean, he went off on something and he cursed a little bit on one show, or you know what I mean? So that's good because you're getting it real, and the people that are listening are getting it real. So
Yeah.
okay, right
Yeah.
on.
Sometimes it'll catch him off guard or catch him sideways and he gets upset about it or whatever. But like we're getting a real response. Like this is
Hmm.
this is not him like a canned response that he thought about while he was in the shower before we recorded. This is me getting him right there on the fly. You're getting the honest Jake or Ted or Hacksaw response.
Right. So, but when they do a regular show, are they getting a little bit of the a little bit of the
Ordinarily,
ordinary, a little bit of the brainstorming of what you're going to be talking about
Ordinarily,
in
if
the
they do like a radio show, the host or whoever the producer for the show will send them the questions ahead of time, so they get
uh-huh,
to look at it and all that
right.
stuff. So yeah, I like the fact that it's just fresh and they're not expecting
Mhm.
it, and we're
I
just
like it
getting
too.
unvarnished answers.
And you're getting real, and you're getting real stuff. So, and I'm sure all those guys are opinionated, and they have their every right to be. I
Sure.
mean, so. Okay, so do you have anything else, like any other people contacting you to like, hey Marcus, I want you to, man, could you produce this? Or hey Marcus, I want to do a podcast, and hey, you want to be the host. So I mean, pretty soon your Rolodex is going to be full, maybe?
Yeah,
Or
it's, opportunities spring up here and there, and some of them I'm like, "Hey, man, I'm too busy." I mean, obviously, there's exceptions where, like, if Bret Hart reached out to me and wanted me to do a podcast, I think I could fit it into my schedule, you know?
so you're not very, I don't want to put it out like you're very selective or whatever, because everybody that's contacting you is probably a name. It's been a name in the business. A
Oh,
name in the
sure.
business is going to contact you and say, "Hey, Marcus, I want to. Hey, I want to do a podcast. You know what? Whatever, fit me in. Try to see what we can do, but let's do it. I want you as the host." And more.
My Oh, I'm sorry, go on, go on.
No, go ahead.
My goal with all of it is like I don't want it to just be like let's just create a podcast. I want to create something that's going to benefit me, and more importantly, and I to me is benefit the talent, because I want them to want to hang around and I want them to want to do these podcasts. And so like if I get an offer and I'm like, you know what, I'm just not sure if it's got legs, or not sure where I'm going to put it or what I'm going to do with it, then sometimes I'll pass. But for the most part, you know what, to this point, I don't think I've been approached for one podcast yet where I've just flat out said no. I'll most of the time, it's if somebody approaches me with it, I'm like, hey, look, I'm really busy, but I know this guy, and
Uh-huh.
he's a great podcaster. He might be able
Uh-huh.
to help you out,
Uh-huh.
and
Oh, so
candidly, that's
you actually, if you can't do it, you actually, give it to maybe your brother. I
exactly.
mean,
That's
yeah.
how
Oh,
Dominic got with Magnum and Greg. Is I got approached by it with it, and I was like, you know what, I'm really busy. And I love the idea of the podcast. It's a great
sure.
idea, and
Mhm.
they're associated with that Power Town Toys line. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I was very torn where I'm like, I really want to do this podcast, but holy shit, am I busy?
Yeah.
So
Like,
I was like,
you got, like I said, to both, I mean, to both of you, you guys, like, your two podcasts, you could set up your own podcast convention with the people that you got.
oh man, yeah, no, it would be great. And
Yeah,
the other thing is Dominic and I from the start have, like, Dominic, again, he made that he reached out to Evan and got me the job. Then it's like Dominic and I, our goal is like, okay, if one of us steps up a level, the other one's we're gonna reach down and help the other one come up too.
that's
And that's
that's
kind of been our
awesome.
goal from the very
Yeah,
start. So yeah,
that's
it's any
awesome.
opportunity. Dominic and I say to each other all the time, hey dude, my success is your success. Well, if one of us wins, the other one wins too. So that's our
That's
goal.
awesome. That's great. So you both, like, when you guys say you go to what is it, Starcast? You guys go to all that stuff. You guys go to, so you guys like, hey, we got to go. We got to pack. You guys, now you guys being hosts are, you're celebrity. Well, personalities. Let's put it that way. You are
There you go.
personalities,
Yeah.
personalities in the wrestling business now.
Yeah.
And you go to all, I mean, you're gonna go places, and now conventions. You guys, do you guys ever think about like setting up like conventions and just interviewing guys there and having it live, or you guys ever
That's a
done
cool
that?
idea. That's a really cool idea. I
Real
would I would love that idea. Like, get a table and just have people come over and talk to them. That's a
Right.
really neat idea. Yeah.
Oh God,
Uh,
I'm
you know
thinking. I think we're a lot of ideas tonight
yeah,
for you.
you come up with
Damn.
some great shit.
Well, thank you. I try. Yeah,
But
because there's a lot of stuff where you two do your what was the podcast? The Dynamic Dude
the
podcast.
two dynamite dudes.
See? And then that's, you have somebody sitting there at the conventions, and you guys
That's
interview
not
them. And
bad.
oh God, yeah, we're
You
already,
just
we're
created
marking
a
it right now.
monster.
Well, that's okay, but that would be great, because there's a lot of that stuff now since COVID and stuff like that, and
Right?
all these casts and conventions and stuff. I mean, there's a convention every week.
There are, and normally whenever I go to these, it's through ad free, and I'm there to help. I'm not there. It's you said it. I'm a personality in this network, but I also recognize that, like, look, it's I might have a couple fans, but by and large, I'm just a dude who does podcasting. Like, the real stars are the wrestlers, and
Mhm.
I'm there to help them out. So, like, for example, I was at Starcast in Chicago this past year, in whatever September.
Mhm.
And I was there with Jake, and so I'm helping Jake at his table. I want to help him make sure that
Yeah,
everything goes
yeah.
smooth. But then Jake and I had a stage show, so I'm there helping him. I'm like his handler, and then we're like, okay, our stage show, we just got called up, and we go up on stage and do our show, and then I'm back with Jake helping out. And that's kind of like my goal. Again, I just want to bring value everywhere I go. So if that means that I'm like the guy who's running to get drinks, then I'll do it.
So you'll do so you well, you and your brother probably do the same thing. So you guys are like the guys that are, say to me in wrestling, you guys are, tearing down a ring and you don't care
Yeah.
what it is because you guys are doing podcasts and doing whatever, and you're no better than anybody else. You'll get in there and get the dirt and grime and lift stuff up and put it in a truck.
Hell yeah. No,
Yeah,
I'm happy
yeah,
to
that's
help
cool.
any way I
Yeah.
can, and I also recognize that I'm gonna learn more by doing that stuff. Like, put me in a
Mhm.
position that's uncomfortable for me, like, make me, yeah, I don't know, handle the money at one of these events or whatever situation. I'm like, "Okay, yeah, show me how to do it. I wanna learn,"
Right.
you know?
Oh, okay, cool. So, speaking of, the wrestling stuff of today now, you're doing podcasts and you guys talk about stuff of today. Do you add any of the going ons of all these major companies and you get to ask the guys that? So you guys do a little bit of that too?
Sure, it's interesting 'cause, you gotta kinda walk a fine line, especially with Jake, because he works for AEW right now, he's under contract, so it's like,
Ooh,
it's and Jake is not watching the competition, he's not, like, I think he catches some of it, but for by and
uh-huh.
large, he's not watching the competition, he's locked in on what he's doing. So,
Okay.
it's like I'll ask him some AEW questions here and there. We actually did 2 episodes about his AEW debut and then
Uh-huh.
the pay-per-view that followed it. But, for the most part, like recently the Vince McMahon deal,
Mhm.
Jake and I spoke about that on that podcast.
Man,
And
that's what
and
what
Jake was very
yeah.
honest, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah. It's the legacy. Do you think this legacy is it's forever tarnished? Forever.
There's
Forever.
no coming back from that, man. There's just
Uh-uh.
not. Unfortunately, it's I heard a lot of people make the comparison of being whatever the fake word they made up is, I guess Ben Wad or whatever, where
Mhm.
essentially he's just gonna be he's you dare not speak his name in WWE circles anymore. It's I
Yeah.
think it's over. I don't think he's ever gonna get into his own Hall of Fame.
No.
Like, man, it's a mess. It's a
It's
mess, and
just
rumor has it it could get worse as far as more people coming forward. Like, that's been the big buzz on the internet recently. So it's like, look,
well,
I don't have any inside knowledge by any
right,
means.
right, right.
But
It's
yeah,
just a
it's
bad
not
it's
looking
just a
good.
bad it's just a bad well, I wanna tailor to newer topics and stuff. That's how I
Sure.
entered that. So
No, it's good.
to me it's bad. Look, we all know, I mean, I never met Vince or anything like that, but just his persona and how he did stuff back in the day, we all know. You know what I mean? And you know how the boys are and the boys club and stuff like that and stuff. It's a different time now. Like you can get canceled very, very quickly. Stuff that maybe I did 15 or 20 years, I can't do now. You know what I mean? You have to watch, you have to hold yourself accordingly. But also too, I feel it all went down as it did. Everybody on every podcast said something. I know Bischoff said something, Jake did something. No, I don't think Bruce said anything, and I don't think he's going to.
Oh no,
So
shouldn't.
no, no, no. And other people in other podcasting world and people on the internet and TikTok or whatever. But you know what? That happened. It's not even like nobody's talking about it right now. It
Right?
just it just it's you know what I mean. Now it went from that press conference last night that you know what I mean, and that's how it was. It's like an old shell game,
Yep. You move from
and
one
that's
thing to the next.
yep,
And if right after Vince, what was it? It was Cody and The Rock. Oh, they
that was
screwed
it.
Cody. Yeah,
Boom.
Cody's not getting the main event.
What do you
And
think
then
about that?
when I first saw it, I was disappointed. I'm a Cody guy. I like Cody, and I love The Rock. Don't get me wrong. I grew
Right,
up on The Rock. He's
right,
awesome. But
right.
it just after last year, it was like everybody had their boners deflated whenever
Yeah,
whenever
yeah.
Cody
It was a little
lost.
salty. I was salty. You know what I mean?
right,
Like,
right, because it's like
yeah.
finish the story, Cody, and then he
Mhm.
doesn't. And then it's like they put him on the video game cover, and the theme of the video game this year is finish the story, and it's like he wins the Royal Rumble, and everybody's like, oh shit, it's happening. And then it's like, again, we got deflated. And then this press conference happens, and
What did you think about this press conference?
No joke. I told Dominic this last night. He was there at the press conference and he called me after it was all done. And he was like, "Well, what'd you think?" And I was like, "Seriously, dude, that's one of those moments that's going to go down as one of those same moments as almost like Hogan having lust in his eyes. You know what I mean? That iconic moment in wrestling. We just witnessed it, and you were there live for it. I mean, the way that they played that was the only way that you could play that situation and come out of it with the match, because you can't have The Rock stay babyface. If you really think about it, you can't have The Rock stay babyface and then fade into the background and say, you know what, I'm giving this match away. Instead, they did the smart thing and they made Rock and Roman act like, hey, look, this is our lineage, this is our royal
Yeah, that
family,
tree
and
was
we did.
so huge.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah,
huge, and it was
it
so
was.
arrogant. And I don't know if you saw, but The Rock was listed as the new high chief of the family. Like
Oh.
his like
Well, I
Peter
couldn't
Maivia.
see. I tried to see on my TV, and I
Somebody
couldn't
did a
see,
close
but
up of it. Yeah, so The
okay.
Rock, underneath his name, it said High Chief.
Oh,
So like he assumed the Peter
well,
Maivia role. So the
his
whole thing was just
grandfather.
so arrogant. Yeah.
Well, he was at Pat McAfee in the afternoon because I watched that in the
Mhm.
I'm a huge Pat McAfee fan. Pat is just
Oh, he's
phenomenal.
great. He's great.
But he, the Cody Cryberry babies, and then all of a sudden I'm like, dude, he's going heel right here in this, right in McAfee's thing. It's starting right there,
Yep.
and then it just went viral, and then it was tweeted out. So I mean,
Iconic moment, really. It's
yeah.
like the mega powers exploding. That's really what it reminded me of whenever I watched it. Like, this is one of those moments that like 20, 30, 40 years from now, people are gonna say, "You remember that night?" I really believe that.
Yeah, so now and even Seth was pushed to the side.
Yeah.
Seth was pushed to the side,
Seemed
and
very
then he was,
rude.
yeah, and I mean he is a workhorse. Like, he is
Oh,
a
he's great.
workhorse, and he was like, he went off there, and they were cursing back and forth, and that's what I like. Like, the realism of being angry. And Seth was angry because they made that championship more secondary than it actually was, because he defends it all over the place. Like, Roman is, I'm not appreciative of that reign, because when Hogan, Hogan was wrestling every night, twice a day and stuff like that. Roman was not, and I understand it's a different time. And they should have did this a couple years ago, but The Rock looks like he's in phenomenal shape,
Oh, unbelievable.
and then
Unbelievable. I mean,
it
yeah,
just,
if you look at the other talents around him, when he walked up to Cody before he slapped him, I'm like, man,
yeah,
there's a size disparity there. That is a massive human being.
yeah,
Even
and
him beside Roman, who looks like a big guy himself, Rock just kind
he's
of
bigger.
dwarfs him.
He's
Yeah,
bigger. He's
yeah,
bigger. He's bigger. And then Cody, you know what I mean? And he didn't even start it, I mean, it was Roman talked about Dusty. You know what I mean? Like, that
yeah.
was what started, so and I think, and tonight SmackDown is happening, and it's probably crazy, but they did the show. Everybody's talking about what happened last night, and that's everybody's going to talk about what happens last night. Like, I feel bad for AEW, because at the Rumble, when you had Cody, you had Punk, you had Jade Cargill, and I'm like, oh my god, like that. I mean, at one time, AEW was like, it had to be to watch TV for me, but now it's not so much, and I feel bad, but maybe they should have Jake like write storylines,
That's
like,
man, you said it, and that's exactly right. And Jake and I have talked about that before. And look, I mean, there is no denying the unbelievable talent on that AEW roster.
sure, I
I mean,
agree, I totally
good
agree.
grief,
I
the athletes over there are just phenomenal. What
Yeah,
an incredible base that Tony Khan has built. I just
yeah,
think that Tony Khan is running the company and he's doing creative,
he
and
needs
it's
help.
like you need some help, and you
Tell
need
tell
help.
tell Jake to help him, because Jake is, I mean, come on, Tony, let him have a little bit of the book, or let him have creativity. Like, when he was coming out with Lance Archer, I thought Lance Archer was going to be the super monster, and then it dropped the ball,
I mean, hey,
and I'm
dude,
like,
that stuff that we saw in Georgia, like around the time that Mr. R and Ted were feuding,
mm-hmm,
Jake was booking.
mm-hmm,
The same thing with Jake and Ronnie Garvin, that incredible feud. Jake booked that whole thing. A lot of the Legion of Doom stuff that happened. Flash forward to Mid South. I mean, Jake and Lord Humongous, and
yeah,
Jim Duggan and Buzz Sawyer, and
yep.
like the chain matches. That's Jake Roberts. He was the booker.
Well,
Um,
then on this interview right now, I think we probably solved something, but nobody will actually let. They probably won't let. They won't let him do it, and that's the problem, because now they can't compete because of what happened last night. Like, it's just, I don't think they. I don't think they. I don't think they can. WWE right now is just geared down and just mowing over people, like, running it. The vehicle is strong,
Unstoppable.
is the strongest it's ever, and there's great talent on both companies. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes with Tony, I think less is more, and I think right now the only star that he made right now is timeless Tony Storm. Like I,
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, and there's stuff that they could do, but now do you see the tag match happened in Australia from last night?
I did not know.
No, I mean when he slapped him when they walked out. Do you think in the Elimination Chamber that will
I
be
thought you
the?
said a
I'm
tag match
sorry.
in Australia. I was like racking my brain, like, wait, what
No,
promotion was in
yeah, no,
Australia?
no.
Okay, I got you.
Well,
I
sorry.
got you.
Sometimes I if
No,
I
no,
had an
no.
energy drink, I'm talking about so much shit that I know what I'm talking about. But
That's the
the
way it's
tag
got to go,
match,
right?
yeah, I feel Seth Cody versus Roman and The Rock, and I don't know if The Rock. I mean, he said The Rock's been training. I'm sure he has, but lifting weights is different than being in a ring.
Yeah. I asked Jake about ring rust not too long ago, and I was like, how long does it take for it to accumulate? He said 4 days.
Yep, yep, yep. That was the episode. Yep.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like, I was shocked. I was like, "Man, I figured you could probably step away for, like, a couple weeks, maybe a month, and be fine." And it's nope,
No.
4 days, that rust starts to accumulate. You've gotta stay out there. You gotta stay keeping taking
Yeah.
bumps. And, to your point, it's like, Roman Reigns works what? Like, once a month, something like
Yeah.
that. It's like, "Brother, you might wanna get out there and bump around and get your body calloused."
Are you? Yeah. So are you? I'm sure you and your brother are going to Philly.
Yes, we'll be there.
Yeah, I figured. I just hope the weather is good for you guys because that's a scary part, because it's in April. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, could you see like a foot of snow happening in April? Oh my
Man,
God, that would
what a
just
spectacle that would be at WrestleMania,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Just the
yeah.
parking lot would be a spectacle.
Oh, and those Philadelphia Eagles fans and those Philly fans are
Oh,
just.
man.
I mean, you don't wear your Dallas stuff out there.
Oh, no, I will not be wearing Dallas stuff.
Yeah,
I don't need to
yeah,
be
it's
getting jumped on South Street.
yeah, yeah, it's a different world with those guys. When you boo Santa Claus, it's trouble. So, so anyway, because we talked a little bit of recent stuff what happened last night and that's cool. Have you and your brother ever thought about just doing stuff where you guys are reviewing shows that are going on for the fans of your interpretations of the shows? You guys ever think about doing a show of that?
So that is pretty much what Two Dynamite Dudes was. It was like we would
Uh-huh.
watch Dynamite and we would review it. Then it became two. Actually, we rebranded it Two Dynamite Dudes on a Rampage when Rampage came out.
Oh,
So we were talking about both programs, and we did that for a long time, maybe like a
uh-huh.
year and a half. But then it just got to the point where I
You
was
guys are
so
too
damn
busy.
busy. Yeah, I was, and Dominic's moving his direction. I'm moving mine, and I'm like, hey man, we got to hang this thing up and just kind of focus on some of this other stuff.
Oh,
So
you guys, you're
maybe
so
one day we'll
busy.
get back to it. We'll see.
Okay, okay. So anyway, I got some lovely five questions. I don't know. You might be. I don't know. You might be. What?
I'm
Oh, Bubba, what the hell are you doing?
I'm
Um.
psyched.
Okay. So I got them. Let me find them here. I got paperwork where I can't even. I don't have my glasses on and I'm old. Um.
Take your time.
Usually, I try to do stuff too. I try to be prepared. So it's not like you know what I mean. Like I would never. And sometimes, like when I do my other shows, I use non-scripted and I do it. But you got to be prepared when you do your stuff. You just can't go off kilter and stuff. You have to have everything A through Z.
Oh
I'm
man,
sure.
it's funny because we've got our notes, and I've got
Uh
everything. Essentially, I've got a start and a stop point in the notes where I'm
huh.
like, okay, I want to get at least to this point, and it's like sometimes we'll go off on tangents, and I'm like, hey man,
Uh
I know you've got to go in 15 minutes, and we've got like 3 pages left, brother. Let's
yeah.
saddle up.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know if you guys do any rants, but I know when I go on a rant, sometimes I can go off and it's all over the place, and it's just I have to calm down. My wife is like, you can't be doing that. I'm like, I'm sorry, oh, no, that's how I am. So anyway, I got these 5 questions. The first question, and you probably watched your brother last week, so some of them might be the same, some of them might be a little different.
That's all right.
Yeah, your favorite movie of all time, any
Ooh.
genre, anything.
Any genre. I absolutely love the movie Good Will Hunting. I always thought it was great,
Ooh,
phenomenal acting.
okay.
I mean, Robin Williams in there was just unbelievable. Matt Damon was great. Love that movie. I also love really old movies though. Rio
Well, yeah.
Bravo.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Hmm.
Yeah, because your brother is a Dean Martin fan. So, are you also a Dean Martin fan too?
Not as big a like, I love D. Martin. I'm not as huge
Okay.
a fan as Dominic is, but I'm a huge D. Martin fan, and yeah, Rio Bravo with Dean Martin, John Wayne,
The Sons of
uh
Katie Elder. Good
yeah, The
movie.
Sons of Katie Elder's a
Yes.
great one.
Yes.
Man, there's some great old school movies, but yeah, Rio Bravo, I don't know if you know this, it was like it inspired a ton of modern day movies, like The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, I think, and Assault on Precinct 13, and it was like it was such a monumental, great movie. But yeah, Rio Bravo is probably my favorite of all
Well,
time.
John, you can't get, I remember when I was a kid, and I remember when he passed away, I think I cried because
Oh, John
I
Wayne.
saw a lot of the Dukes movies. I
Oh
probably
man.
seen, because I'm like a movie, I try to be a movie connoisseur thanks to my dad, but because my dad was like westerns and and war movies, because my dad was he's a Vietnam vet, but it's just, John Wayne, he only
Oh,
died
he
and
was so good.
he only died in 2 movies.
That's it,
Yeah,
and
he
he
died in The
as it should be.
Alamo and The Shootist. With actually, The Shootist actually had, because I'm from Indiana, Pennsylvania, and it's the home of Jimmy Stewart.
Yes,
So
yes.
Jimmy, being at IUP, the statue out here, everybody
Oh
would get
man.
drunk and drink out of the,
I remember being down there at that Strand movie theater, I think, on Main Street, and
uh-huh.
they were showing It's a Wonderful Life down there. And then
Mm-hmm.
right afterwards, I went to Wolfie's. So I hooked
Yeah.
it up, brother.
It's still here, brother. It's still here.
So I'm going from one extreme to the other.
Yep,
Jimmy
yep,
Stewart
yep,
and Wolfie's.
yep. Okay, your all-time favorite male wrestler, professional,
All-time favorite.
all time.
Well, character or ring work?
Ooh, let's go. Oh shit, that's a good one. You got me. Oh, let's go character first. Damn, that's a
Character is
good one.
Kevin Nash. I love Kevin Nash.
Okay.
It's just like how casual, cool he is. He and Scott Hall both. Yeah, I mean, to this day, I started as a huge Kevin Nash fan, in '98, and I've always loved him.
So and I'm sure you met him.
Oh yeah,
Oh
yeah, I
yeah.
have.
Okay.
And it's funny. I'm around these guys so often. I'm really not starstruck anymore. Like I get
Right.
to sit down around them
Right.
and hang out. But at one point, I was backstage somewhere, and Kevin Nash was there, and Dominic was sitting. Dominic helps him out on his podcast, so.
Oh
Dom was like,
wow.
"Hey, Mark." Dominic knows I'm a huge Mark for him, so
Uh-huh.
he was like, "Hey, Marcus, come sit with us." I'm like, "Oh my god!" I sat down next to Kevin Nash, shook his hand. We bullshitted for a while, but like afterwards, I was like, I was nervous there for like the first minute, and then it's like you just start talking with him, and you're like, "Oh yeah, he's just a dude."
He's not he's not a small man at
Oh
all.
no, he's huge, which
No,
is
he's
so it's like
huge.
intimidating in two ways. Like, oh, this was my childhood idol. He's massive, but
Mm-hmm.
then again, it's once you sit down and
Yeah.
talk with these guys, it's like, oh yeah, just a guy, and
Yeah.
you
You're
just
sitting
talk to
down.
him.
You're sitting down having a sarsaparilla with Shredder, so you're good. So okay, now what you say? Technical. So who's your technical wrestler?
So like ring work
Yeah, you
is
stumped me. You got me on that one. That was
I
good.
know I'm
You
I know I'm being like a homer, but
okay.
Jake, I love Jake's ring work.
Okay.
Anytime I watch him, you and I talked about it. He's so crisp and
Mm-hmm.
smooth, and everything he does has purpose. Like
Yep.
you don't see Jake just randomly doing anything in the ring. Everything
Right.
he does, he's like driven towards something.
Mhm.
I love watching Jake work. Any match, any era, really. Like, look, a lot of people shit on Jake in 1996. With the
When
WWF.
when he did that when he come back from the religion thing.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
I was all Jake for that. I honestly thought he was going to beat. I thought he was going to win King of the Ring. I
Me
really,
too.
yeah, I
And
thought.
on the way there, he's like beating Hunter and he's beating Bradshaw and
Yeah,
Gold Dust. Like,
yeah.
and like he's having these matches, and like a
Mhm.
lot of people are like, oh well, he's out of shape, he's getting blown
Nope.
up. And it's like, okay, he might be getting blown up, but like he's out there and
Right.
he's selling. He's still got those real nice crisp punches. Everything he
Yep.
does has purpose. Again, like man, any
Well,
era of Jake,
it
I
was
like watching.
redemption. That was his redemption, and you can't go wrong with a redemption story, and that's what it
No.
was. And then, the greatest, that promo, you know what I mean? That was the
Oh.
promo that kicked. I mean, Jake was there. That kicked off something that WWE has never sold merchandise wise, and then
Austin
off to the
316
races.
does not exist without Jake Roberts.
I
Period.
totally,
It just doesn't.
I totally agree.
millions and millions and millions of dollars in merchandise, all
Mhm.
because of something that Jake Roberts said. And yeah, man, it's like even him getting blown up in the ring, it's like it kind of works. This guy's in his 40s. He's coming
Sure.
back after being gone for a while. Like,
Mhm.
let him get blown up. Let him have to take rest breaks. Like, let him have to come back to it. And then he can be that vicious Jake again. And he's
Yep.
working from underneath. Like, I don't know. I love that era of Jake. He
No,
hates
I
talking about it.
honestly, I know we talked about him the whole most. I mean, and he's an icon. But yeah, I thought he was. I thought I was invested, and I thought he was taking it all. And it was a redemption story. The storyline was because no offense, sometimes you don't see redemption stories in professional wrestling go the whole way.
Yep.
So
It's
okay,
true.
so you'll probably stump me on this one with technical and gimmick female wrestler.
Actually, that one's easy. Medusa. I always loved her work. Medusa, Alundra
Okay,
Blaze. Yeah.
okay,
Always loved her work since I was a kid. And now actually I have the benefit of working with her and getting to know her personally. And she's just such a
nice.
sweetheart of a person. But no, her work has always been really nice and so ahead of its time. And
Okay.
like, I when she first started, like AWA days, it was
Mm-hmm.
like, you could tell she was green. But then she went to Japan and she
Yep.
she put in the work and she honed her craft and she came back as one of the best in the world.
Yeah, and it's a shame because a few of those ladies could probably, if they're just a little bit too late. You know what
Yep.
I mean? Like, and I always think that about myself. If I was born, if I was in the early '80s and stuff, you know what I mean? I'd fit right in being a brawler and no tech. But Medusa could have been hanging and clanging with every female wrestler, with Charlotte from right now
Oh,
to
could you imagine?
Bailey. I mean,
Could
it's
you
just
imagine if she was around, like, in her prime today?
yeah.
She'd be a huge her and Jade Cargill. I mean, she'd be
Oh.
getting the best out of Jade right out of the gate. It's funny, you as a brawler, I just pictured you working in Mid-South. That would be something.
That is one of my most favorite companies of all time.
It
I'm a
would've been fun to
huge
see you chopping
well,
meat with Hacksaw.
oh, well, well, I appreciate it. And yeah, that was the best. I mean, WWE, but it was Mid South for me. If you're gonna watch something, that's what. If you want to get into wrestling and you want to become a wrestler, if you don't watch Mid South, then you don't need to be in the ring. That's just how I feel.
And look, say what you want about Bill Watts, and it sounds like sometimes he could be a real shitbag human being, but
You know what?
man, he books some fantastic television.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Your favorite tag team of all time.
I mean, The Outsiders is the easy answer just because I love Hall& and Nash so much, but I'll challenge myself a little
No,
bit.
that's okay. Whoever you love, that's what
Wha
it's.
I also, what's funny is whenever I first started with, ad-free shows, I started working the first show I started working on was Arn, with Arn Anderson, and so
Well,
I was and dude, I was born in 1986,
mhm.
didn't super get into wrestling until 1998, so I missed all of
Uh,
it, like, Arn's
I
entire
was
career.
there. Chi-Town Heat in Chicago,
Yes.
man. I'm telling you, it was, I would have a case of beer and I was young and we would like that's what I would do. I wasn't I mean, hey, I was chasing girls and getting, drinking, but it was all about wrestling for me. Like it was, I mean, I lived and breathed professional wrestling and Chi-Town Heat. I watched the tape and I watched it numerous times. And
Oh,
I'm a
and
big warrior, Mark. I'm a
oh,
huge
the Road Warriors.
Yeah, I'm a huge Legion of Doom. When I met Animal, I thought that was the greatest thing since sliced cheese.
Oh,
You know what I
dude.
mean? Yeah, and we talked football. So
That's awesome
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
But no,
So
it's
it's the
like
outsider. It's the outsiders then.
well, The Outsiders, but like, so I started with Arn, and whenever I started with him, he's going chronologically through his career. So at the
Hmm.
point that I started, it was 1985, and I started right near the end of 85 when the Horseman thing is starting.
Ooh.
And or no, they started at the end of 86. So I was a year ahead. He was working with Oli at that time. So that's when I started. And
Hmm.
so I'd known about the Four Horsemen, of course, and heard about their legacy and stuff, but I'd never
Oh,
seen any of it. And
watching it live was
oh, it had to be
something. I mean,
unbelievable.
it was something else, man. Like,
Right, like
poor Dusty.
revolutionary.
When they beat him in the parking lot, and I'm like, oh my god. I mean, I was a young kid.
Or they
Like,
have him trapped in the cage in the Omni.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
like, such great stuff, and
Hmm.
so I'm fresh eyes on it here as a grown man, and I'm hearing Arn talk about it, and I'm seeing all the clips, and I started to become this huge Arn Anderson fan as I'm working with Arn, right? So it's like I didn't really know his career that well, and then I'm becoming this huge Arn fan, so I said The Outsiders, I took the long way around, but it's also the Brainbusters or Arn
Okay.
and Tully. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. I mean, those guys, those two they were phenomenal.
Oh,
They
dude,
were phenomenal.
unbelievable. And then
Yeah.
Tully just was gone after his WWF run. That was essentially it for him. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
man, as I was just getting into this guy, now he's gone.
Yeah, politics and people just did, said the heck with it and did crazy stuff, I'm sure, at that
Nuts.
time. So, what are your hobbies outside of producing podcasts and being a podcast host? What do you like to do on your downtime?
I love reading. I'm a huge Stephen King fan. Love everything he's written. What else do I do? Oh, like my daughter, it's a huge part of my identity as soon as I became a dad was
Mhm.
being a dad. And so anytime I'm not working and my daughter is home, not at daycare and awake,
Okay.
like she's asleep right now,
Uh-huh.
but and I spend as much time with her as I possibly can. I love playing with her, and I want her to look back on her childhood and say I had a great childhood and my dad was there all the time. That's all I want from my kids.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's I love spending time with my kids and my wife and reading and aside from that, I don't have time for anything else, brother.
So you well, yeah, because you are busy. So, the Stephen King, books, what Stephen King movie do you like?
Let's see. I love his miniseries, and a lot of people shit on the miniseries because a lot of them are really cheesy. But like Storm of the Century miniseries was great. The miniseries I thought was really cool.
That first
Um,
did you like now, what did you think? I know we're getting off the tangent. The original It compared to the new It, because the original It scared the shit out of me.
yep.
But I never saw the second one because I don't like reboots because I'm just old school.
So it's definitely worth a watch if you like the story because they go a little bit more in depth with the
Okay.
story. They just alter the timelines a little bit, so
Uh-huh.
it's definitely worth a watch. But I will say, the clown not nearly as scary as Tim Curry as the
No.
clown.
No, Curry's
No,
was
dude,
yeah,
he was like terrifying.
he scared the shit out of me, and I'm not a big horror person at all, but I think, for me, I think the king it would be Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah,
That's a great
yeah.
one.
The
Now,
Green Mile's good too.
did you ever see the Dead Zone movie with Christopher Walken?
A long time ago. Long
Dude,
time ago.
yeah, that's worth a rewatch.
Yeah.
The Dead Zone with Christopher Walken, man, super
Well,
super well done.
Walken was something. I remember him in the Dead Hunter or the Deer Hunter when I was a kid.
Oh
See,
yeah.
once again, yeah, my dad took me, and I mean that movie was like, wow, when they played Russian roulette, and it just
And your
oof.
dad was a Vietnam War veteran. I'm surprised you wanted to see that.
Yeah, he doesn't ever talk about it.
Yeah.
And he those guys, they went through a lot of stuff, and God bless them, and God bless anybody that's ever been in the service.
Oh,
I never
yes.
been in a service, but I'm pro military, and I'm pro for anybody that serving the country. But yeah, my dad always, my dad said platoon was the closest thing that he ever, you know. So, and he didn't talk. I mean, he just loves watching that westerns and war movies. Just a typical. My dad hates wrestling.
Does he really?
Yeah, but in his defense, he liked Jesse Ventura and Piper, and I'm I'm
Alright.
I'm also a Piper Mark II. So yeah, he
Well,
liked
and
people that
Ventura
talk.
had that legit military background too,
Yep.
so that probably didn't hurt.
Yeah. Okay. So, where do you see yourself a year from now?
A year from now? It's an interesting question, dude, because
Oh.
it's, as I was kinda telling you my story there, I hadn't really thought about it until that
Mhm.
moment when I was talking to you about it, but really, realistically, my job has changed every all 3 years I've been doing this, it's changed once a year.
Oh
Like,
wow.
I met Jake in 2022 at WrestleMania. The next year during WrestleMania, I started up with Ted, and I'm a podcast host at that point. Now it's like I've got Ted and Hacksaw, and I'm producing Jeff Jarrett, so it's like my job just keeps changing, so it's
Mhm.
hard for me to project, but really what I want to be doing is this. And it's cool because I get to do something fun for a living. I'm a wrestling fan and now I get to talk to these wrestlers and it's really cool. But I also view it as a big responsibility where I have access to these guys and it's up to me because I'm doing the research or at least reviewing the research after Andrew does it. It's up to
Mhm.
me to get these stories out of these guys that are going to be living on forever on YouTube. So like these stories are going to be told or being listened to whatever 30 years from now when somebody wants to hear
That's
about
true.
Jake Roberts. And
Yeah.
like am I doing a good enough job? Am I doing Jake justice? Am I doing the audience justice?
Mhm.
So that's one of my big goals is like continue to get these great stories out of people. That's what I want to be doing a year from
Okay.
now.
Well, you're painting a great picture with a paintbrush, and you're just stroking the story in. So, I mean, you do. And if people haven't listened to your podcast, I'm telling you and your brother do great stuff. And if you don't listen to their podcast and you're wrestling fans, then shame on you. So,
Man, thank you.
I mean, I'm just being real. Like, and just how you talk, you know what I mean? Like, and you, like, I could have swore you did radio or whatever, but the acting, it's the acting part. You guys, both of you, two brothers that act, that are in the podcasting, wrestling podcasting world. Just
The
amazing.
man, it feels like all the pieces just kind of fit together
Mhm.
right for it to work out, you know?
Yeah, yeah. One word that describes Marcus DeAngelo.
Tenacity. I don't let
That's good.
anything stop me, dude. And you know
That's
what's
good.
funny is I'd never really verbalized it before. And I was listening to an episode of Kurt Angle's podcast, and he was talking about this old wrestling coach that he had, and the wrestling coach's mantra was "Do it anyway." So
Uh-huh.
when you feel exhausted and your muscles are sore, but you
Mhm.
still have more reps to do,
Keep
just
going.
do it anyway. Yep. And that's anytime I'm working and it's midnight and I've been up since 7 and I've still got a bunch of YouTube clips to finish or whatever, or research that I've got to complete. And I'm like, I just want to go to bed. I'm like, do it anyway. And
It's
I
the
do.
drive. It's the drive. I mean, and for me, uh, I mean, I'm on a smaller scale, but it's the drive. My wife is a big supporter, probably like your wife is a big supporter, and your
Hmm.
family supports you. So that means a lot. I mean, it totally. I mean, and realistically, if you got your wife behind you, you know, I mean, that's the greatest tag team partner in the world. So you're winning championships anyway. That's how
Oh,
I look at
absolutely.
it. You know,
Absolutely.
so well, Marcus, do you have any links and anything that you would like to promote? The floor is yours, sir.
Oh man, I'd love to get you guys to follow the podcasts on social media. So at Snake Pit Pod on social media, all social platforms, or at Ted DiBiase Pod on all social platforms. But really, the biggest way that you can help us out is subscribe on YouTube. So youtube.com/ at Snake Pit Pod, or youtube.com/ at Everybody's Got a Pod. And by the way, we don't expect you to just do it out of the goodness of your heart. We provide you guys with great clips. Every Monday on Ted's channel, we drop a YouTube exclusive clip. So it's a clip you're not going to hear on the podcast or anywhere else. You're only going to hear this specific story every single Monday on YouTube. So that's a great reason to subscribe. Also, like I said, Jim Duggan has partnered with us over there, and that's the only place you can find his podcast is on Ted's YouTube page. So if you want to hear what Hacksaw has to say, and trust me, you do, he's very, very entertaining. You can only get that story at youtube.com/ at Everybody's Got a Pod. As far as Jake is concerned, you want to subscribe to that YouTube because we do giveaways. We will pick a random subscriber once a month or once every couple months, and we'll just send you an autographed Jake trading card. Like I'll buy a card from like the 80s or whatever
Mhm.
and send it to
Cool.
Jake. He'll sign it and we'll send it to your house. Or an action figure or something. We'll send you free stuff. So there's a good reason to subscribe over there. Plus, we're looking to do more on the YouTube channel, possibly bring in another partner. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, please follow us on YouTube. And if you listen to us on your podcast app, just do us a favor. It takes only a second. Like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, and everybody, I always share anybody that's ever come on and taken the time to come on the Triple B experience. You know, I do anything I possibly can to spread the word. You know, Dominic and you, and I mean, I appreciate you, Marcus, for coming on tonight. And then if everybody please subscribe, because I'll share it on my social media, because that's just, you know what I mean. That's just how it is, and it is great stuff to listen to if you're a wrestling fan. And I'm not trying to do, or I'm pretty honest. I'm not a kissing ass, never got me anywhere in life anyway. But just hearing Jake and Ted, those Mid-South and the old stories and how you present it, like you know what you're doing, and it's phenomenal stuff, and everybody should subscribe. And I will always be sharing this stuff because, like I said, since Marcus has come on to Triple B Experience, I will share all his stuff as much as I can on all my social medias, and I'll always give him a shout out on the show. And I appreciate you, Marcus, for coming on. And you can come on anytime, brother. Anytime you want to. You got if you got anything else going on, or you just want to come on and just shoot the shit on Fridays on my Triple B Experience, brother. You know, you and Dominic are more than welcome to come on and you know, just shoot the shit, because that's what I like to do on Friday nights. But I
Man,
don't
I
like to drink
appreciate it.
anymore. But you know, but yeah, I appreciate it so much, and I got to learn a lot more on the in-depths of the world of wrestling podcasts that actually are, you know, very successful. And you have a very successful thing, and I wish you the best. And you know, you're kicking ass and taking names, and you know, the only brothers in America that are hosts of professional wrestling podcasts.
I better get the gimmick attorney on that
Yes,
one.
yeah, you better. Yeah, Marcus DeAngelo, everybody. Thank you, Marcus. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit like and subscribe to the Triple B Experience, and please go to listen to the Snake Pit and Everybody's Got a Pod. Marcus, thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.
Means a lot from a childhood idol. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh my God, God, you and your brother. I tell you what, God bless you too. It makes you know what I mean. It just, I don't know. It's just, thank you so much for real. Yeah, you don't know how much that means to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
God
brother.
bless you. Yes, thank you, everybody. Good night. Thank you so much, and we will see you.